Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual info session for the Governor's School for the Arts. My name is Nick Cobalt. I'm the director of GSA, and so glad to have you with us today on our last and final virtual info session. So we've had, we've had 13 of these so far, or 12, and this is our 13th. So we're really glad to have you with us today for our open Q&A. If you don't mind, pop into the chat feature and set it to message all attendees and say hello to the group. Let us know where you're coming from. Share your name if you're comfortable with that. And that way you all have a sense of who's here as well. Hi, Kate. Hi, Amber, Elaine. Awesome. Hi, Bree from Breathitt County. All right. Fantastic. And you all can feel free to use the chat if you'd like to connect with each other throughout this. This is going to be sort of an unusual info session for us, and that really the point here today is just to see what questions you have, and I'm just here to answer them for a while. I am going to launch a poll here in a moment and do a short presentation, and then we'll get to your questions. But like I said, feel free to keep connecting to each other in the chat if you'd like. I'm going to launch a poll here just so we get to know you all a little bit more. Just curious about if you're a student, a parent, what art forms you're interested in, and if you've had a chance to attend a virtual info session before, or if you've had a chance to read your applicant guide yet. So it's totally fine if the answer to either of those is no, but just curious what you've had exposure to thus far. Cool. Looks like we've got a lot of Kentucky here. That's awesome. So I'll leave this poll up here for just a few more seconds. Take your time. I know there's a few questions there. Beautiful. All right, let's see what we got here. So a majority of you are students. That's been pretty consistent with our virtual info sessions. So welcome, students, and we're glad to have a couple parents here. Parents, thank you for supporting your children's creative endeavors. We don't take it for granted. And then it looks like we've got a lot of different art forms represented here. That's pretty cool. All of you have watched or attended a previous GSA virtual info session. So welcome back. Good for you for taking time to watch those. And almost all of you have read your applicant guide pretty thoroughly. That's great as well. Okay. Well, like I said, I'm going to take us through a brief presentation, and then we'll get started on your questions. And let's go ahead and get started with this presentation. So first things first, like we said, we're here today to ask your questions. You can go ahead and start putting them in the Q&A feature if you'd like, but I did just want to take a moment to mention we will use the Q&A feature for your questions. So try to put them there. That's separate from the chat. I'll try to keep my eye on the chat feature if you have your questions in there, but there should be a button in your Zoom interface that says Q&A, and you can just click on that to ask your questions. And that will just help me stay more organized. All right, so let's talk really briefly about the summer program and just some other big picture facts about GSA that will be hopefully helpful for you to review. So the Governor's School for the Arts summer program is 3 weeks long. It is residential, meaning that the students, the staff, and faculty, we all live on campus together for 3 weeks. Specifically, the program takes place at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. They've got some amazing residential halls there. We covered a little bit about dorm life in the GSA 101 virtual info session, but if you have questions, that's why we're here today. The summer program in 2021 will take place from June 27th to July 17th. Now, we are still hoping for and planning for an in-person program. As of right now, as you can imagine, there's just a lot of variables that we kind of have to keep our eye on in the coming months to figure out what that could look like. So if we are in person, it's very likely that we'll have some health and safety protocols in place, most certainly. If there's a worst case scenario and we're unable to convene safely in person, we had an amazing virtual program this past summer. We talked a little bit about that in GSA 101 as well. Again, your questions are welcome today. If we do have to go virtual, we know that we're really prepared to provide a great experience for you all. There are 9 art forms at GSA. You can apply for up to 2, but you can only attend for 1. It's a popular question. You can only attend GSA for 1. And best of all, GSA is completely tuition free, which is really unique, actually. A lot of programs like this across the country are no longer tuition free. So we're really proud to provide this program to you free of charge. And like I said, we're hoping to know more about whether the program is in person or not, really by the spring, by the time basically that you know whether or not you're accepted into GSA. It's our sincere hope that by then we'll understand what format the program will take. I mentioned GSA has 9 art forms. For the good of the order, here they are: architecture and design, creative writing, dance. Our dance program is based in ballet and modern and choreography, drama, film and photography, instrumental music, and that covers any and all instruments, musical theater, visual art, and vocal music. So our vocal music is slightly more classically based, than our musical theater program, and it's also where our choir program is in musical theater. Excuse me, in vocal music. Our choir program is in vocal music. I'm a vocal music alum of GSA, I should know that. Here's your application deadline, timeline rather, starting with the application deadline. So your GSA application is due on January 10th. So you've got just about 3 weeks left to complete that application. If you haven't started it yet, go ahead and start your application as soon as you can. You'll need as much time as possible to complete it. Again, really encourage you all to submit that application before January 10th. I am willing to bet hundreds of people will be submitting the application on January 10th. So the system will run slow. Your uploads may take longer. It might be a little stressful. So save yourself the stress. Get it in at least a couple days early. But January 10th, 11:59 p.m. So that means the end of the day. That's a Sunday. Have that application in. And then we invite some of the applicants to advance to a second and final round. We call this folks finalists. So you will find out if you are a finalist or not on February 19th. And if you are, you'll be invited to an audition or review on March 19th or 20th. These are usually in-person final round auditions or reviews. They usually take place at our host campus, which is UK. This year, of course, we're really not sure that they're going to take place in person. So we will let you know by the time you find out if you're a finalist or not, whether those are going to be in person or virtual. And if they are virtual, we'll tell you what all that will entail. But your applicant guide tells you about the final round. If you want to go ahead, think ahead, envision your success, and take a look at what we're asking you for. And chances are a virtual version of your audition or review is going to really be similar to what would have happened in person, just in a virtual realm. So that information should still be somewhat relevant to you. And then on April 16th, we announced the GSA 2021 class. And on that day, we also announced a list of alternates. And every year we have some alternates get moved up into the program just because some folks are unable to join us who were in the initial accepted list. So that being said, we don't have like a set number of alternates. I can't guarantee the alternates will get in, but that list does exist. And it's also, to be clear, a super big honor to be considered a GSA alternate because it's a very difficult designation to receive. And it really means that you're extremely talented and we're really at the very top of the applicant pool. And then finally, GSA 2021 will take place in June 27th through July 17th. Again, you have to be a current sophomore or junior to apply, which means that you attend GSA as a rising junior or a rising senior. We're not going to ask for your GPA, SAT, or ACT score at any time. You can apply for up to 2 art forms. There is an application fee. That's $30 if you're applying for 1 art form, $35 total if you're applying for 2 art forms. But just so you know, if you qualify for free or reduced lunch, you can indicate that in the application and that will waive the application fee for you. We're going to pop out here in just a second and take a look at the GSA website, but I just want to remind you, everything that you should need to know about the application is available on our website, KentuckyGSA.org. Make sure that you've read the applicant guide. I know almost everyone who's here in real time today has, and you can no longer attend virtual info sessions. This is the last one, but you can review those virtual info sessions. So if you've reviewed one, there may be others for you to check out that might be of interest. So we encourage you to take some time, and if you have a question, they may be in those info sessions as well. That being said, those recordings and those applicant guides are not the only way to get information. You can email us anytime at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org. Also, just so you know, we're on social media. If you have questions, though, an email is the best way to get a hold of us beyond today's webinar. We love chatting with you all. We love answering your questions. but I'm going to throw an asterisk at you after I tell you to email us with your questions. Our offices are about to be closed for a couple weeks. So we will be out of the office from December 19th, which is this Saturday, through January 3rd. I can let you all in on a little secret since you're here with me today. We'll probably pop into the office for a day or two the week after Christmas, and we'll hopefully be able to get to some questions then. But you should anticipate, if you have questions during this time, that we might not get back to you until a week before the application is due. We'll get back to you. We'll figure it out. So we're not going to leave you hanging, but just have an awareness that we will be out of the office during that time. You will get a post survey after today's webinar, either via email or it'll pop up in your window when I end the webinar today. We really ask you to take that survey. It's super helpful for us in terms of just figuring out our reach with virtual info sessions, so we can figure out where you are and who you are. So thank you for participating in that. And without further ado, I am going to stop sharing the screen, and I'm going to take us to our website and then share my screen again. So I see some questions are starting to come in through the Q&A feature. That is awesome. Keep them coming. If you walked into the session today with questions, go ahead and put them in there, and we'll take a look at those in just a second. All right, so let's pop back over to my screen here. And I just want to take you all to the GSA website and show you where all those fantastic tools are. So we're going to KentuckyGSA.org. This is our homepage. You'll notice that the URL will change. Don't let that throw you off. GSA is a program of Kentucky Performing Arts, a larger organization based out of Louisville with a statewide mission. So that's why that URL changes. And you'll see there's a bunch of buttons over here on the left that you don't have to worry about. But the first thing you'll see on our homepage is interested in applying to GSA 2021. Why, I know you are. You can click here to learn more and apply. The first thing you'll see is a button to apply now. So you will click this button to reach the application portal. But I want to point out underneath this, before you start your application, you can click on this View Now button under Important Dates, Info Sessions, and Deadlines. This is where you're going to find all the recordings of every info session we've done. So we did a GSA 101 virtual info session. That's a great overview of the summer program, what it's like, and also the application process. Just click on this link to review that recording. We did an info session all about applicant guides and how to use them. We talk a lot about the recommendation process in that webinar. And then we also have a virtual info session that takes you to the application portal step by step, so you see what it's like to fill out the application. We've also done a webinar for every single art form with an adjudicator or a faculty member of that art form. This is the first time we've ever done anything like this. You all probably received a new level of information and thankfully transparency that we've not been able to provide in the past. So we're really, really thrilled with those. We hope you enjoyed them just as much as we did. So you can click here to watch those. And of course, you're here for our last open Q&A today. I'm just going to go back to that page before this one and point out that the applicant guides are also available here. So you can choose which art form you're interested in, and then click through, and eventually it will take you to the applicant guide for that art form, which contains everything you need to know about what you're going to submit. One or two other things to show you real quick. You keep scrolling down, we have some FAQs here on the website. We also have what's called a resource library, and I'll just point out to you that you can look at a brochure, a promo video about GSA. You can look at a PowerPoint presentation about GSA. So just know that that's there as well. And then I'm actually going to go back to our homepage. A lot of people ask about the scholarships associated with GSA. This is something I should probably talk more about. For going to GSA, you as an alum have access to scholarships at 28 colleges and universities across the state and actually beyond, across the country. So some folks understandably are interested in knowing what those scholarships are. So those are actually located in the alumni section of our website. If you look on the right side of my screen on that drop-down menu, I'm going to click alumni. And then one of the first things I'll see is scholarship opportunities. I'm going to click here to learn more. And there's going to be a list of every single school that offers a GSA alum scholarship. A few things to keep in mind is that these scholarships vary in size and scope. The scholarships are determined and given out by the schools themselves, not GSA. So the school decides, if there's a standardized test score that you need to be eligible for that scholarship. Some schools may require you to major in something in order to access a scholarship. Some schools might not have any of that. They might say, you're a GSA alum, you automatically get this scholarship if you are accepted to our school. Congratulations. Some schools are full rides, free tuition, room and board. And for other schools, it's going to be more like a couple $1,000s. Either way, a little bit goes a long way, right? Can't scholarship never hurts, I say. So just so you know, that is where you can find that on our website. So that's my presentation. I'm going to open up our Q&A window, roll up my sleeves, and see how I can help you all out today. So somebody has asked a question about in the application portal, they're uploading their essay. I believe their document, their written essay. So you have 2 essay prompts that you have to respond to, and this is true for online art forms, a written essay prompt and a verbal response to an essay prompt. So one of those is going to be a document, and one of them is going to be a video. And this person is asking about the document. It says upload personal questions short essay, and it says attach media. Does that mean that I do the essay on a Google Doc? And actually the best way to do that essay is going to be to do a PDF or a Word file, most likely. And so you will actually upload a document. So not giving us a link or anything like that, but uploading a document. We cover this in the application portal info session. So if you want to see like what that looks like to upload a document there, go to that webinar and we actually show you. And I'm going to look at one more thing here. Yeah, no, I think that covers it. And same goes for a video. You can shoot a video with your smartphone if you want. That's totally fine. You'll need to hire a professional film crew, and then you'll upload that file. Someone asked, how do you find out if you're a finalist? So on February 19th, you will find out whether you are a finalist, and you will be notified by email. We may also send you a message through Accepted, but when we send you a message through Accepted, it sends you an email saying that you have a message and accepted. So I really appreciate this question because it brings up a super important point. We are going to email you throughout this whole process. So if you're someone who's like really not into email, you don't check it that much, keep checking the email address that you gave us in your application. I think you may even have a chance to give us 2 email addresses. Be checking those inboxes throughout this process. We will email you from time to time, and we will email you those especially important results, the finalists and the accepted and alternate lists. What may happen is that we may actually post the list on our website, but we'll email you to let you know that that has happened. Do we have to attach all of the requirements for GSA on the start of the application? If so, how do we? Okay, I think I understand what this question is asking. Do you have to, if this person is asking, do you have to upload everything all at once? I wonder if that's what this person is asking. You can start and stop your application. So again, I'll point you to the direction of the application walkthrough webinar. Only because it's a really great visual representation of what I'm talking about right now. So when you start your application, you'll have to create an account on Accepted. Accepted is our application portal. When you are creating your account, if you are underneath the age of 16, which I know some of you are, you will actually have to get a parent involved in setting up your account for you. So the parent actually has to create the account and then create one for you. Accepted's support team, it has a great video tutorial on how to do that. So if you look around on Accepted a little bit, you should be able to get some help or directions on how to do that if you're under 16. If you can't find that or you need more help, just email us, let us know. We'll get you set up straight. So you create your Accepted profile, then you select which art form you're applying for, and then you will start your application. It'll ask you a couple questions about eligibility, like are you a sophomore or junior in Kentucky, and so on. The first thing you'll do is give us some very basic information like your name, and then you'll provide the email addresses for your 2 recommenders, and then you will submit all of that. It's called application part 1. That's all you'll be able to see, is just really kind of some basic information that we're asking about you and asking for the email addresses for your recommenders. It confuses some folks because they're like, wait a minute, where am I uploading images of my art or my essays? When you fully submit those recommenders email addresses, it will say thank you for submitting that, and then when you log back into your application, it will have taken you to part 2, and that's where you will see you're uploading your videos, your essays, your images, and so on. And when you fully submit application part 2, that is the final piece of the puzzle for you, the final part of the process. So that's when your application will be fully submitted. If that didn't answer your question, try maybe asking it in another way in the Q&A and we'll get to it. Do alternates get automatic attendance to the next class of GSA? Great question. So like I said earlier, we announced a list of alternates as well as a list of accepted students. Alternates do not get automatic acceptance to the next class of GSA if you are a sophomore when you become an alternate. Everyone starts the next year's application process with a blank slate because every year the applicant pool can change a little bit. And this is really paralleled in any kind of audition or review you might go to as an artist for the rest of your life. Who else is in that applicant pool, that audition pool, that review pool, can really affect the outcome of the entire process. So that being said, we're going to know that you were an alternate the previous year, and we're going to know that that is a pretty big accolade for you, and we're going to be really glad to see your application again. So it definitely bodes well for you. It definitely probably means that you have a good chance of having some level of success in the application process. But it's happened in all ways. We've had people be alternates one year and then go through the whole process the next year and get into the program. Some people have become an alternate again. Some years we even had someone be an alternate as a sophomore and not as a junior. So it can really go any way, but it's definitely, if you're an alternate, especially as a sophomore, should really be an encouraging designation for you. And really, we hope that that means that we really hope that you'll apply the following year. Do we need an accompanist for our solo and instrumental music? That's a great question. I believe the answer is no. In fact, I believe we have a guideline in the applicant guide for instrumental music that says no accompaniment. Yeah, so I'm actually going to pull up the instrumental music applicant guide here real quick and share my screen, just because this is a good example of how to use an applicant guide. So I have the instrumental music applicant guide up here, and it says right here for all videos, probably super hard for you guys to see right now. There we go. For all videos, if you look at this fourth bullet point, no accompaniment, live recorded or electronic is allowed. So you do not need an accompanist for your instrumental music video. Thanks for asking. For instrumental music, if we make it past the first audition, can we use the same piece that we used for the preliminary audition for one of the recordings needed for the second audition? It's a really good question, Luke. Thanks for asking. So a lot of you may be thinking, if I'm invited to the final round, will I be showing the same paintings, same artwork? Will I be singing the same song, the same monologue, submitting, playing the same solo? The first thing to know is that if you are a finalist, we are going to tell you that information. We're going to make it very clear that you either have to prepare the same piece or that you are welcome to submit a new piece if you want, but you can play the same piece. I would say in most cases, we're not going to say you have to submit something different than you did in the preliminary round. So for instrumental music, you're probably gonna be asked to submit a recording of the same piece and maybe have the option for a new piece if you want. That will probably be a choice we give to you. But again, by the time you know whether you're a finalist or not, we will have made that very clear. But what's probably not going to happen is that for instrumental music is that we're going to say you have to submit a new piece. So just know that. But again, if you are a finalist, especially if the final round goes virtual, we are going to give you very specific instructions on what to expect and what, if anything else, you need to prepare. Because some of you will need to prepare something new for the final round, even if it is a second recording of a piece you've already performed or something like that. So someone has asked a great question here. If the monologue you've chosen for your musical theater audition is over 60 seconds long, how would you recommend shortening the monologue so it will fit in the time frame? Thank you. So again, this applies to a lot of different art forms that have videos. We have time guidelines on those. I will say to the person asking this question, if your monologue is like 5 or 10, maybe even 15 seconds over 60 seconds, don't worry about it. We're not going to immediately, disqualify anyone because the length of their video goes over a few seconds. So rest easy there. If it's something where, the monologue is really like 2 minutes long, then that probably is a little bit much. So it's difficult to, without knowing the exact monologue and having it in front of me to really answer this question with too much specificity. But I would, encourage you to, one, either try and find a monologue that is maybe shorter and can fit in the time, or, look at if you feel like you have a monologue that you're really committed to, but it's, 2 or 3 minutes long, then you're probably looking to take a selection of that monologue, find a selection of it that's about a minute long. And what I would recommend you do when you're choosing that selection is to look at the criteria. The criteria is what you're being scored on. So in this case, look at the criteria for musical theater. Look for the things that we're trying to see in your monologue, that we're scoring your monologue on, and ask yourself what excerpt of that monologue will reflect that criteria and allow you to show your abilities in that criteria the most. So that can help guide you in that excerpt. So I hope that's a helpful answer your question, but I think the two big points there are always use the criteria to guide your decisions, because it's what we're looking for. So in all decisions, show us your abilities in the criteria areas. And two, if we say you need to have a 60-second video and it's just a few seconds more than that, don't worry. Again, we're not going to disqualify you. The only asterisk I'm going to put there is for creative writers. We do ask that your manuscript is 5 to 7 pages. Don't push the page limit on those. You really keep those to 5 to 7 pages. Just because we have so much to read, and that's really out of respect for the adjudicators. I will also mention for instrumental musicians, I know for some of you, some people ask, well, I have this piece, I think it's great, but it's like 3 minutes over, just because we know that the way that music is written, sometimes it can be difficult to find a piece that's an exact length. If you feel really strongly, instrumental musicians, about submitting a solo, it's the right solo for you to submit, and it's longer than the time frame we give you. You can do that. Just be aware we may skip around that video a little bit. We might not watch the whole thing. We're really only going to watch the time duration that we have said the video needs to be. So, which for you all instrumental musicians, for the most part, is going to be 3 to 5 minutes. Percussionists, you've got a couple exceptions there. But instrumentalists, just know if you submit something that is 7 minutes long for your solo, because it's just the best way for you to show the criteria, that's really what you feel strongly about doing, we may skip around in that video and watch approximately 3 to 5 minutes of it. All right, let's keep questions going. If you get into GSA with a friend, can you request to be in a dorm together? That's a great and popular question. Thank you. The answer is no. You cannot. At GSA, a big part of the program is all about exchange and getting to know different people from different walks of life and different parts of the state. So, of course, this year, if we're in person, we'll have to evaluate the residential hall situation, and that will include evaluating whether or not folks have roommates. Generally speaking, you will share a suite with one other person, one other student. You will each have your own bedroom with your own door to it. That's great. There's no like bunk bed situation in the residential hall they're at UK. But it's someone that you'll see a lot. So we are going to purposely give you a roommate in another art form and from another part of the state. And again, that's because a big part of GSA is the excitement and joy of getting to know people who are different from us, whose experience at GSA is different from ours. So you can get to learn about another art form and who's from a different area than you are. You'll still be able to see your friends at GSA. There's plenty of time to socialize with them outside of class. Well, I don't want to say plenty. We're in class a whole lot, but you will get to see them, but you will not be able to room with them. What is the general dorm situation? Someone asked. And again, we covered this a little bit in GSA 101. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do so. All students at the Governor's School for the Arts and UK's campus live in Holmes Hall on the University of Kentucky's campus. That's Holmes, H-O-L-M-E-S. And if you actually go to UK's website and look up Holmes Hall, they've got floor plans and everything. So you can actually see what the rooms look like. But like I said, every room has a shared like living space that has like a high top table and a countertop and a microwave. And then there's 2 bedrooms that each have their own door. And we provide you with a big packing list before you come to GSA. If you are accepted in the program, we send you a lot of information ahead of time about how to prepare, what to pack for that living in the residential hall situation. You have what's called a residential advisor in the dorm, which is usually approximately college-aged mentor that's employed by GSA to take care of you in the dorms. They're sort of your GSA mom or dad, if you will. And you also have an RA group, who's a group of other students that kind of report to that RA. The residential hall floors are separated by gender, male and female, and there's no access in between those two gendered floors. There is common space that everyone is welcome to hang out in, certainly. And if there's someone, any students who are transgender or do not fit in a binary, do not identify with a binary gender, male or female, we work with those students one-on-one. Just to figure out the best housing situation for them, because we know that that can be a different situation for everyone. So that happens every year, and we're always happy to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the housing situation that they're in. Someone said, my church is in the Lexington area. Is it possible to make a special request to go there on Sundays? So let's talk about going to houses of worship at GSA. I really appreciate this question. We completely understand that for a lot of you, going to your house of worship is a very important part of your life, and we want that to be a part of your GSA experience as well. So if you are accepted into the program, you will have the option to let us know in a piece of paperwork, basically, what your denomination or your religion is. And if you would like to go to a house of worship during GSA, we will arrange transportation for you to that house of worship with GSA staff. The one caveat I'll mention is that we are always going to find a house of worship that in your religion or your denomination that is as close as possible to UK's campus. In fact, when we can, we like to walk to them. And also, we are only going to be able to facilitate that transportation if you do have, if there is a house of worship in the Lexington area or the UK, the area surrounding the University of Kentucky. If the house of worship in that religion or denomination is in that area. We know we're not probably going to be driving you 3 hours if that's the nearest house of worship in your area, unfortunately. So that being said, if you are, let's say for instance, Catholic, and there's a specific Catholic church that you go to in Lexington, we can't guarantee you that we will take you to that specific Catholic church, but everyone who is interested in going to a Catholic church, we will transport to a Catholic church near UK. We'll all go together as a group. So that's how that works. Can my creative writing fiction manuscript be under 5 pages, like 4-ish? Thanks, this is a good question. It can. I will say that the reason we ask for 5 to 7 pages is because we feel like it's the appropriate amount of writing to let us get to know you and your writing style and to see the criteria in your area. So you can certainly submit under 5 pages, but I would just really make sure that you're taking advantage of every opportunity possible to showcase yourself in the criteria, because we don't want a manuscript to be too short that we don't learn enough about you or your writing. So it won't necessarily be automatically disqualified or anything like that, but really encourage you to stick to that 5 to 7 page manuscript if possible. I want to quickly, pardon me while I look at our creative writing applicant guide real quick. Yeah, I mean we're pretty specific in the applicant guide that manuscripts that don't follow guidelines will not be read, and they do ask for 5 to 7 complete pages. So I would encourage you to find a way to get to that 5th page if you can, but know that ultimately that's your decision. So we will always let you know if you are an alternate. You will know that you are an alternate. We actually put out a list of alternates. So we are never. Let me phrase it this way: you will always know where you stand in the GSA application process. So when we announce the finalists on February 19th, if you are a finalist, we will tell you that. If you are not advanced to the final round, we will also say, I'm so sorry to let you know you have not advanced to the final round. You will receive a no. Same goes for the final announcement of the GSA class. On that day, you will find out if you have been accepted to GSA, or if you are an alternate to GSA, or if you have not been forwarded to either of those lists. So we will tell you no as well as yes, regardless of the answer. We won't leave you hanging. So someone asked, I love this question, do puzzles/kits count as an architectural piece for architecture and design? I have a huge 3D Hogwarts puzzle. That's awesome. Well, I'll say a couple things about this. First off, for architecture and design, you know, keep in mind that your architecture and design portfolio does not have to be architectural in nature. That's one of the tips in that architecture applicant guide. And does that count as a 3D piece for your architecture and design portfolio? Well, it sounds 3D to me, and the question of whether or not it's the piece you submit, that's up to you. So if you look at the criteria of architecture and design, and you're looking at this puzzle that you put together, and you feel like it really is the best way to showcase your work in that criteria, then you can put it in. And you know, just know that we're not going to, again, immediately disqualify you because it's a puzzle. We might think that that's a really interesting decision and might ask you to, you know, tell us why you selected that as part of your portfolio, in which case just have an answer prepared. It sounds like a great way for us to get to know you. But also, you know, be looking at the criteria and make sure that you feel like it's something that reflects your abilities there. Someone asked, will creating a new account on Accepted for this year's application affect the board's ability to see that I applied last year? So it sounds like maybe this is someone who applied to GSA last year and is maybe using a new email address or something like that and Accepted. The short answer to that question is no, it will not affect their ability to see that you applied last year. We actually don't really, at this part of the process, worry too much about whether or not you've applied last year. So we kind of, you know, do it, I don't want to say blind the first round, because we see your names and your pictures and so on. But we may very well, what's very likely is that we might remember that you applied last year and say, oh, look, so-and-so's back, if you have the same adjudicator as last year. But once we get to the final round, we have records of who was a finalist last year. And so even if you have a new account, that won't change our ability to see that you were a finalist last year. Thanks for that question. My recommenders haven't filled out my recommendation forms yet. Will that affect my application? Thank you for this question. So if your recommenders have not filled out your recommendation forms yet, first off, a great thing to do is to reach out to them and say, hey, the GSA application deadline is coming up. Could you please complete the recommendations? On our end, we're also able to see that they have not done that. So getting closer to the recommendation, getting closer to the application deadline, we will be able to also email them and say, hey, the student's waiting on your recommendation, please fill that out. Ultimately, if January 10th comes and goes and you have a recommender who is not able to complete your recommendation forms, we will not disqualify you. It will not be held against you. We know it's outside of your control and that you did all you could by supplying the email addresses. Now, we're probably going to chase down your recommenders to get those recommendation forms in, but ultimately, we'll not disqualify you. And you know, if we need that recommendation to advance you into the final round or something, we're gonna get the recommendation, but it's not going to be held against you. If your recommender is telling you that they aren't seeing the email come through that you sent, we can do a few things. The first thing to do is to make sure that your recommender is checking their junk folder. Also, make sure that they understand that the email with the recommendation form is going to come from Accepted, not GSA. So it's an email from Accepted, the application portal, not from the Governor's School for the Arts. And the subject line begins with the phrase documentation request, which I don't mind saying, I think is somewhat of an awkward subject line for something that's a recommendation form, but it is what it is, and that just has to do with kind of background of technology. So make sure that they understand those three things. Check the junk folder, it's coming from Accepted. The subject line will be documentation request. If they still don't see it, double check that you inputted the correct email address. You can email us at GSA if you inputted the incorrect email address, and we can fix it on the back end. You will not be able to, this is sort of another strange quirk, you are not able to change the email address on your end until you have fully submitted your application, which I can see on my end, almost none of you have. So for most of you, you will be needing to email us with that correction, and we'll make it on our end. Once you've fully submitted your application, I think you should actually be able to go in there and change that email address though. But let us do it in the meantime. That being said, if it's getting sent to the right email address and they're still not seeing it, that's a great time for you to reach out to accepted support. Again, if you're ever having technology issues with accepted specifically, reaching out to their support team is probably going to be the best way to get your questions answered. If you email GSA about something that accepted should be the one helping you out with, that's okay too. We'll just point you in the right direction. But the contact information for accepted support team is listed at the end of the applicant guide, every applicant guide. So there's an email address there and a phone number. Someone asked, can I edit my monologue to fit the time requirements? We spoke about that earlier. Again, just keep an eye on those guidelines. Make sure that you're still, showcasing the criteria, but also don't edit it if your monologue video is over like 5 or 10 seconds. Don't worry about that. What will the group interview be like? Will the same set of questions be asked in a circle? So this is a good question. It's a question that changes based on which art form you're asking about, and this person didn't identify the art form. But if you have a group interview or a group review in the final round, that looks a little bit different for every art form. A lot of times it will include asking a question and you just kind of go around the circle and everyone responds. Sometimes they may have you interact with each other. We may be really interested if you have a group audition or review and seeing how you support or interact with or show interest in the other people in your group, just because GSA is kind of one big group activity. We're a community of artists at GSA, so we are interested in seeing how you interact with other people. Other times in a group environment, even if it's virtual, we may ask you kind of one at a time to, share your work, if that's reading something or performing something. And again, we're going to give you all that information if the final round goes virtual by the time you know whether or not you're a finalist. But in the meantime, check out the final round requirements in the applicant guide. If it's somewhat vague, it doesn't have a level of detail that you're curious about, that might be on purpose, because we might be interested in seeing how you kind of respond quickly to variables that we present to you. Is it fine to ignore repeats for instrumental music in order to fit it into 5 minutes? Yes, if you have large sections of your music, it's like count out 12 measures of rest or something like that, you can skip those, that's fine. For architecture and design, how am I supposed to turn in the 2 3D items? Multiple angles or just a front view? That is up to you. You can do either, but let me go to the architecture and design applicant guide. We say in the applicant guide, if submitting images of 3D work, please submit up to 3 images. I lied to you. If submitting images of 3D work, please submit up to 3 images per portfolio piece from different angles. So for architecture and design, if you're submitting 3D work, which you should be, you'll be submitting up to 3 images. And again, that's a great example of the devils and the details of these applicant guides. So just make sure to read them super thoroughly, and there's a lot of detail in them, but it's all super relevant. Do you get grades in GSA? Just curious, since we will be in classes. Wonderful question. You do not get grades at GSA. You do not get a report card at GSA. We all agree to hold ourselves to a code of conduct and certain standards. But at GSA, as long as you are challenging yourself and agreeing to be challenged and discover growth and working along with your peers, then you're going to be creating greatness. So that's really how we measure your performance at GSA is, are you contributing to the community? Are you open to being challenged and growth, even if that is kind of difficult sometimes, right? Challenge is challenging, but we do not give like A's, B's, C's, so on. We don't really have like a set bunch of tests or something like that we do. On weekends, are we off? Are there certain things we can do, like hang out with friends? Is there like a hangout area? So Great question. On weekends, you are not off, actually. You are in studio almost all day on Saturday and a lot of Sunday. So on Saturday, well, let's talk about weekdays for a second. On weekdays, you're basically in some sort of presentation or studio from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. On Saturdays, we start 1 hour late, so you're in some kind of studio or presentation from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. And then on Sundays, we don't start until 2 p.m. So Sundays, you're in some sort of presentation or workshop or class from 2 p.m. till 10 p.m. We go over the day-to-day a lot in GSA 101 webinars. I encourage you to check that out. That being said, there are hangout areas in the dorm. The lobby is a great place to hang out. There's a courtyard that's super awesome for hanging out when the weather's nice. Of course, there's a perimeter that we all stay on together. At GSA, you cannot go anywhere unsupervised as a student. So you're not getting to run down to downtown Lexington on your own. We're a pretty sequestered program. There's no visitation. So your friends from high school who aren't at GSA can't pop over to campus to come visit you. There's no visitation from family during the whole 3 weeks. And we certainly understand that that can be daunting, but we have a great community of GSA, super supportive. If you ever do feel homesick or have issues with kind of being away from home for that long, we have a mental health professional, a counselor who's on hand 24/7, who's really great at working with all of us about any kind of homesickness or other feelings that might come up while we're in this very new environment, right? It's kind of a lot to be thrust into this residential life program that's really intense in terms of studio for 3 weeks. So we all take care of each other. We talk about our concerns as we have them, and we work through it together as a community. But definitely great places to hang out on campus, and we have a lot of fun in our downtime. We make lifelong friendships at GSA. Some of my favorite memories as a GSA student were hanging out in the dorm. So someone asked if they're submitting a poetry manuscript for creative writing, do you have to start a new poem on a new page? No, you do not. Your poems do not have to start on a new page. You can have multiple poems on one page. Or a poem can wrap over into a next page if it needs to. Do you have any recommendations of what to bring with you to GSA, like laundry baskets, etc.? Like I said, we will send you an extensive packing list of what to bring to GSA. So know that you do your own laundry at GSA. So you will probably bring a laundry basket or at least a hamper, some detergent, but we'll send you a long list. And some questions I'm skipping over here because we've already answered them. If you applied last year or you're a finalist, what can you do to make your application even better than the year before? And that's a great and totally fair question. Of course, there's a lot of nuance there, but I would say the best thing that you can do is be yourself, show up, show us your best, maybe make a little list of how you think you've improved over the past year. All of us have grown over the past year, regardless of what we're doing. I know I've grown in ways, and it can be a great activity to just sit down and bullet point, like what are ways I have grown? And one, if you're invited to the final round, those can be great things to talk about. Maybe you find ways to incorporate those into your essay responses, but also choose work or artistic materials in your application that maybe show us that growth. Is there a piece you wrote or a song you're singing or a piece you created that really shows what you have accomplished in the past year that maybe you couldn't have beforehand? That could be a great way to show us that you've grown. But the most important thing to keep in mind is to not feel overly pressured, like you have to convince us that you're a totally different person from last year or anything. Because especially if you were a finalist last year, that means that we really saw a lot of good in your work. So just show up, show us your work again, be authentic, and let us bask in the glory of your artwork, I say. So I think it's great that you're thinking about that, and I think you hold the answers to that question. Only you best know how you've grown and how to best show that to us. So we just want to see what you're up to this year. Can we use the same essay from last year if we tweak it so that it's just not copied from the previous year? Well, if you tweak it so it's not just copied from the previous year, then it's not the same essay. I will point you in the direction of those essay prompts though, because they have changed from last year. I would probably encourage you just to write a new essay response because it's a new essay prompt. Do not submit the same essay prompt as last year, the same essay response as last year, because the prompt is different. They're, you know, in the same spirit, but it's a different prompt, and we will notice if you do that. That has happened in the past, and we notice when you just submit the same essay from the previous year. One of my recommenders already filled out their form. What happens to the form when they submit it, and will it affect the rest of my application if I haven't submitted it yet? Okay, so when your recommender submits their form, it kind of just goes to the rest of your application materials on our end, and the adjudicators just review those forms while they review your artwork, while they review your essays. It's just kind of part of the whole package that they're reviewing. We talk about the recommendation forms and how we use them in each of the art form specific virtual info sessions that I mentioned earlier. So I would really encourage you to go back and watch the recording of those. And every single one of those, I ask an adjudicator or faculty member in that art form, how do you use the recommendations, or what would you hope students are thinking about as they're selecting their recommenders? So that could be a great way to get a very specific answer to your question. And again, if for some reason your recommendation doesn't come through, we're not going to hold that against you. We're just going to chase down the recommender, ask for your help in that. Please stay on top of your recommenders. It's a busy time, especially a lot of school counselors and teachers are understandably overwhelmed with everything going on in the world right now. So, you know, don't be afraid to give them second or third reminders, and we'll stay on top of them as well. And we'll get those recommendations if we need to, if they're not submitted in time for your application. But please, please, please do your best and everything you can to encourage your recommenders to get this in by January 10th. Someone said, regarding the school administrator recommendation, are we able to put down the email of, let's say, our band director if we're an instrumental music applicant? I believe the recommendation would be really helpful. Good question. I encourage you to read the details about the recommenders in the applicant guide. That school administrator recommender is not asked about your artistic ability. They're asked more about things like your attendance at school, your disciplinary record, things like that. So that's what we ask for that. It's a school counselor, or maybe like an area coordinator or vice principal if you have one of those at a school, just because generally speaking, those are going to be the folks who have access to that part of your record. So we do encourage you to use a school counselor or principal if you have them. Again, maybe your band director would be a great teacher recommender though. I just want to say, I see some people raising their hands on here, which is awesome. I don't know if that means you have a question, but if it does, put your question in the Q&A feature, and that's how we'll get to it. So someone specifically asked the creative writing group interview, what will that be like? And yeah, we ask you a lot of questions about your motivations about writing, and we just get to know you better. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. There is a free write involved where we'll ask you to write a prompt. And we may ask you to share a little bit about that in the group interview, but it's kind of just a group conversation getting to know you. Someone said, if we apply for 2 disciplines, does the school administrator submit 2 recommendations? So there's a second part of this question, but I'll address this first. If you're applying for 2 art forms and you're using the same school administrator for both, which you probably are, that person does have to submit 2 separate recommendation forms, even if the contents are the exact same. And I know that's probably kind of annoying, but it's just the way the system is set up. And same goes for if your teacher recommender is the same for both art forms. The teacher does have to submit 1 form for each. This person goes on to say, we only received 1 confirmation and we can't find the record of confirmations on the accepted ID website. So if you are not sure of whether or not your recommender has submitted your recommendation, I think you should be able to see that in your end. But if it looks like they have not submitted it and you've checked in with the recommender and they're like, oh, I got 1 form and I filled it out, but I haven't seen the other one. If it sounds like they have either not received that or they're having trouble finding it, just email us. We can resend it to them. Again, sort of a quirk of the system. Once you completely complete your application, you will be able to do that yourself, I believe. But if you have not yet fully submitted your application, we have to do that on our end. We're more than happy to. Just reach out to us, have your recommender reach out to us, and we will resend those forms to them. Is there a curfew at GSA? Yes, there is. I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head what it is specifically, but I think it's basically lights out by midnight. So I think you have to be on, we get back from class or presentation no later than 10, a little bit after 10. Some nights we're back earlier. And you've got free time in the dorm. Some people choose to, go chill out and just kind of go to bed early. I think that's an awesome plan. Rest is important. Sleep is important. Sleep is healthy. But you can also stay up in the lobby areas, hang out with folks, courtyard areas. I think around 11:30, we make you go to your floor. And I think by midnight, it's lights out. But again, we'll communicate those exact times to you in advance of GSA so you are well aware. So someone's asked questions about the 3D work for architecture and design, like how much do you have to submit and do you have to submit sizes of it? So I'm going to pull up I'm going to share my screen real quick. And again, this is a great example of how to use our applicant guide, okay? So looking at portfolio images or files for architecture and design. For architecture and design, you do have to submit two 3D pieces made of any material. That's 2 pieces that are 3D, okay? 2 pieces that are 3D made of any material. You do also have to submit an object study, still life, a portrait or self-portrait, and an environment or landscape, all right? So you have 5 required portfolio pieces for architecture and design. This is similar to visual art, just that you have the 3D pieces required. And then we say that the 4 remaining pieces can be, it's up to you. You can submit additional 3D work. You don't have to. We're going to give you additional guidelines down here for other portfolio pieces. For instance, if you're submitting images of 3D work, remember to submit up to 3 images. And then you have a portfolio cover sheet. So here we're asking you to tell us for each piece, the title of work, if it has one, the year of completion, the approximate dimensions, the medium, and a very brief description of your process for creating this work. So yes, you are going to have to tell us the dimensions of your 3D work and in fact, all of your work. Thank you for that question. And yes, you can submit, like I said, sketches. If you have buildings, building sketches or building models that you want to submit, you're welcome to. But again, your architecture portfolio does not have to be architectural in nature. Really encourage our architecture and design applicants to read the tips section of Architecture and Design's applicant guide. There's a lot of context there. I encourage everyone to read the tips section of their applicant guide. It is so helpful. It will help you out, I promise. Then someone also asked for architecture and design, can the still life be any medium? And the answer is yes, it can. I do not believe that we require a specific medium for that. Someone asked, I've heard there's a family day for GSP. Will we have one for GSA? Great question. I'm also a GSP alum, so I can speak to that with a little bit of authority, although that was a while ago, but we work closely with GSP. So the Governor's Scholar Program is GSP. It is another governor's school here in Kentucky. That is a 5-week program, so it's a little bit longer. So they do have a family day in there. I believe by the time Family Day rolls around, an entire GSA's worth of days, though, may have passed. So it's approximately the same amount of time away from home without seeing parents. But we do not have a family day at GSA. So there's that whole 3-week period where you do not see anyone outside the program. And then we invite our family and friends back on campus on the final day. Usually for a big day of celebrations and gallery exhibitions and a graduation ceremony. Again, this year with health and safety guidelines, we'll see how that shakes out. Just a second. Okay, in the Architecture and Design Application Guide, it says for the required submissions that they shouldn't but could be based on something else. If I have a landscape that is based on something else, will that be deducted will that deduct points? Okay, I think I understand your question. I think that this is in reference to the guideline where we say For the 5 required pieces in architecture and design, drawing or working from photographs is not recommended for those 5 required pieces. If we did use a photograph for reference, you must also upload the image of the reference materials. So if you are doing a landscape from the picture of a landscape, we are really hoping that you'll do that from direct observation. So we're really hoping that you're sitting there with your canvas or your paper or what have you. It could be a 3D landscape even, and doing that from direct observation. If you decide to submit something that is you looking at the picture of a landscape and then you drawing from that picture, you can do that. You just need to submit that picture as well. So I hope that answers your question. Do you have to be a junior or sophomore to be in GSA, not even a senior? Again, to apply to GSA 2021, you must currently be a sophomore or junior, which means you attend GSA as a rising junior or a rising senior. So if you are currently a senior, unfortunately, you are unable to apply to GSA. If you're a freshman or younger, good on you for watching this, because that means you can plan years in advance for your GSA application, which is one of the best things you can do to prepare. So someone's saying, I'm not sure which art form this is, probably a visual-based one. For the submissions, there's very specific instructions on how to title the files. So in this case, we say title it like 01_title. And yes, we do mean that you replace the word title with the title of the piece. So the person that submitted this example, the way you have done it in this is correct. Can we order food on campus? Great question. Absolutely you can. We do provide you 3 square meals a day at UK's food dining hall called, I think, the Catston in the Student Center. Really amazing food. Lots of options if you have any food allergies or dietary restrictions. I eat mostly vegan and I eat like a king at UK. So that said, when you get back from your long day in studio, we know some people are pretty hungry still, want a 4th meal. No judgment at GSA. So you can absolutely order food on campus through delivery. How many applicants become finalists? Good question. We do not have a set number of finalists every year. There's just a lot of variables that affect that. Generally speaking, most years, approximately half of the applicants are invited onto the final round, though. Someone asked, do transgender students room with the preferred gender or gender assigned at birth? I spoke about this a few minutes ago. If a student is transgender and we just talk to them about their rooming situation one-on-one, just because we know that being transgender does not mean that you have one set solution, right? So we want to get to know that student more personally, understand who they are more personally, and make sure that we understand what they're comfortable with. We ask them what their ideal rooming situation would be, and then we work with them to make that happen as best we can. So we are not going to just automatically assign you to a gendered floor based on your preferred gender or your assigned gender. We're going to reach out to you, have a phone call, and learn more about you, and then find a solution that's right for you. So, and for the students we've worked with in the past, who are transgender, that solution has always looked a little bit different based on their specific, needs and wants. Thank you for asking that question. All right, we are actually at the end of the questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to give you all just a couple more minutes. If you, oh wait, here's a few more questions that are popping in here. I see. I'm also just checking the chat here to see what you all have been talking about. Oh, hey, Lee Gibson. Oh my goodness, I don't know if you're still on here, Lee, but it looks like you are an RA and a GSA alum. So maybe you were an alum from 1992 and an RA in 96. That is awesome. Nice to have you here, Lee. All right, someone asked, is there coffee at breakfast? You better believe there's coffee at breakfast. Yeah, I'm usually the front in line to get coffee at breakfast. There is coffee at breakfast, there's juice at breakfast, there's milk. Someone asked, the poetry manuscript, can it showcase a wide range of themes, topics, etc.? In other words, it's not a themed collection. That's correct. It can showcase a wide range of themes and topics. You could also submit a themed collection of poetry. That's not a problem. But yeah, that's up to you. Okay. I'm going to go through here. Any lingering questions, be sure to put them in here. And again, if you don't get your question answered today, you can email us at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org. Just going through here to make sure I've answered all of your questions. Okay, a couple more came in here. All right, so we've got some questions here from, I think a lot of this is about architecture and design, although some of it does apply to visual art as well. So someone says, I have a main medium. So it sounds like this person, maybe really is really into drawing or painting or sculpture, and like that's kind of their thing. Can I use that for a majority of my submission, or should I change it up? And again, that is really up to you and how you want to put the best foot forward for yourself. And we're going to, see that you made the decision that you did and want to know why. So, we may ask you in the final round, if you advance into the final round, why did you select these pieces? And we may see that there's really like a theme of like, okay, this person's really into like charcoal drawings. Let's talk more about that. Again, I'm going to point you in the direction of the criteria. Ask yourself, kind of imagine in your head your portfolio of mostly that medium, and then imagine in your head what your portfolio would look like if you really changed it up. And ask yourself which of those portfolios is going to exhibit your, showcase your abilities in the criteria areas the best. Which one of those portfolios are you going to be most excited to talk about? And that's going to inform your decision. And for different people, that's going to be a different answer. So again, that's ultimately a creative choice that you get to make as an artist, and that we're really excited for you to make. But that's what that criteria is there to help guide you. Can you go in depth about how to do a landscape from direct observation? Like by landscape, do you mean just plants, or can it be buildings or have potted plants? Again, here's a great example of a time where you get to make a creative choice. If you submit something as a landscape and you're able to justify how it's a landscape and tell us that, then that's going to be a lot more interesting to us than us providing you with a very rigid definition of what a landscape is or isn't. So again, you can have some creative license there. Now, that being said, generally speaking, a landscape is a view of, often an outdoor space, okay? That being said, if you want to make an argument that the view of your room from your desk is a landscape, that's cool too. Like, I want to point you in the direction of the architecture and design and visual art webinars, if you haven't watched this already, especially in the visual art one. I remember off the top of my head, we had a very relevant conversation to this about, these are guidelines, which are really kind of strong suggestions to you, but a lot of this is really us saying to you, all right, roughly do this, and we really want to see how you interpret that. How you interpret that is going to be really interesting to us. I mean, for a lot of artists, there's a healthy amount of rule breaking too. So, a landscape, generally speaking, is going to be an outdoor scene or a skyline or something like that. It can have potted plants, it cannot have potted plants. That's generally going to be up to you. And then the portrait or self-portrait can be any medium, right? I believe that that is correct. Yep, it can even be 3D if you want, as long as it's done from direct observation. Thank you for those questions. Someone asked, do I do my best effort to show what I like? And I'm not sure I'm interested in that question. If you'd like to repeat it in another way, I'm sorry. Can we be accepted for multiple categories? Thank you for that question. You can be accepted for 2 art forms at GSA, but you can only attend for 1. And I would say every year we have maybe upwards of 10 applicants who are accepted in 2 art forms. So what happens is that we call you in advance of the final list going up, and we ask you to select one of those 2 art forms. We congratulate you. You can put on your resume you were accepted in 2 art forms, but ultimately you can only attend GSA for 1 art form and be an alum of GSA in 1 art form. But you can technically be accepted for 2. Thank you, Amber, for that question. All right. I am going to wait for like 60 more seconds to see if we have any other questions come through. But other than that, you all have asked some really great questions. I'm really appreciative of you all for being here today. And again, keep in mind, you can reach out to us via email with your questions. Just remember, we'll be out of the office for the next couple weeks. All right. Well, without further ado, I think I'm going to call it. We're going to end today's final virtual info session. Please take that post survey after the webinar today. You'll get it either by a pop-up window or via email. Thank you all so much. Remember, at GSA, we think you are amazing. You are an artist, regardless of whether or not you get into this program. And that means that you are very, very important. So thank you all so much. Keep creating art like the world needs it, because the world does. We need you. We need your creativity. And thank you for sharing your creativity with us at GSA. We consider it a huge honor that you decide to share your creativity with us. We know it can be challenging and difficult to put yourself out there. So just know we are already on your side. We want you to do well. We are rooting you on. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And we'll look forward to seeing your applications. Bye.